This video is going to show you how to win your fantasy football drafts step by step, from the time you start in the first round and who to select in the first and second round and how you know who to select, and then picking your strategy, how to perform that strategy throughout your entire draft, and then what your team should look like when it's through. This is the only video you need to make sure that you're performing your fantasy football drafts right. So do us a huge favor. We're actually going to give you our draft guide for free. Yes, our draft guide, it'll be in the pinned comment. We'll put the link there. We'll also put the link in the description, but we're going to give this to you for free. We spent a lot of money on this and spent a lot of time developing it for you. We were going to give it out at 10,000 subscribers, but we figured everybody could use it this week. So if you would please, the least you could do for us is make sure you subscribe to the channel so that we know that you appreciate us giving you the draft guide, because again, the draft guide, it should work for you, but make sure you subscribe for us. That really helps. Let's get into this strategy though. So first of all, a lot of people, and this is probably the biggest question we get asked. A lot of people are like, okay, I have my rankings in front of me. I have the top 24 fantasy football rankings. How do I know who to pick? How do I know who to take in the first round? How do I know who to take in the second round? And most of the time, the answer is that there are some targets that we consider better targets, and there are some targets we consider worse targets. But with that being said, almost every single year in fantasy football, all of that goes out the window and everything gets super random, right? Most of the time, the players going in the top 24 are going in the top 24 for really good reasons. And so what we like to do is basically target our players based on what strategy we want to deploy. And a lot of people are going to say, okay, how do I know which players to take? So let's talk about this. On your screen right now is our top 5 tiers of players in fantasy football drafts, okay? And so if you're drafting from the 101 to the 103, for example, you see in tier 1 here, we have Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, and Tyreek Hill. If you're drafting at the 103, you're going to take whichever one of those guys falls. Here's another example of how to use this. If you're drafting at the 104 and a guy from tier 1 falls, you take the guy from tier 1.
Got to take him.
Okay, so let's go ahead and look. You've got 3 guys in tier 1 and you've got 5 guys in tier 2. Okay, so that goes through the 108. If you're drafting at the 109 and somebody from tier 1 or 2 falls to you, you take that guy. So basically what this does is it gives you the tiers of guys that we have and how we have them ranked in fantasy football. If one of these guys falls out of their tiers to you at your pick, you take that guy. If 2 guys from a tier above falls to your pick, you take your favorite. If all the guys go in the tiers above and you're stuck and all the guys available are in the same tier or lower,
doesn't matter who you take.
It doesn't matter
in that tier, right?
So what we basically need to know is the guys that are considered a level above each other, right? And so again, the tier 2 guys, if you're at the 109 and you're getting Justin Jefferson there, you're taking him. You're taking him over AJ Brown. You're taking him over Garrett Wilson, in our opinion. Again, these are our personal rankings, but these are going to be much more generalized because they're in tiers. And so basically, save this tier list, look at it during your draft and say, okay, I'm picking now at the 206 and all the guys from the top 3 tiers are gone, but Saquon fell to me. According to this tier list, Saquon is the best available and the only tier 3 player available, so you're going to take Saquon Barkley. Hopefully that makes sense for you, but again, the idea is, and there's like 27 players on this list, the idea is you'll have a better idea of who to take based on, we're using some value principles here. Value is not as important in fantasy, but when you're talking in the first 2 rounds, what differentiates kind of who you're going to take from your league mates is really just who falls. Right? Nathan just did a draft in the Flock League where he was picking 110 and his decision was made for him because Justin Jefferson fell out of the top 2 tiers into the 110. And so all these guys had gone, Chase, Amon-Ra, Brees, Bijan, CMC, CD, and Tyreek. Jefferson was left. According to this tier list, Jefferson was the best available player. He was the only tier 2 player left, so he took him. So save this, use it. Again, we're going to link a corresponding tool for you to use during your drafts down below. But that's how you use these rankings. And again, it's all tier based. So these are going to be for the first 2 rounds. So now in rounds 1 and 2, we're going to take the best player available based on tier. If 2 players in the same tier are available, then we're just going to take our favorite. Okay. Here's the other thing from rounds 1 and 2 that you really need to know. Do not take quarterback or tight end unless A, it's a super flex league, B, it's a tight end premium league, or C, there are some crazy bonuses that give quarterbacks like a huge advantage or something like that. Outside of that, You'll notice we have no quarterbacks or tight ends on this list in the first 2 rounds. That's for a reason. That's on purpose. We do not think you should be spending your first or second round pick on a quarterback or a tight end this year. Okay, so now, depending on who goes in your draft, depending on who you get in the first 2 rounds based on who falls out of tiers or who you pick as your favorites, you can decide which one your strategy is. And again, your strategy is going to be decided by who you take in the first and second round. We're going to walk through these one by one, and I'll let you start with the hero wide receiver strategy, which is our number 1 strategy. And I'll go ahead and start with this. This is our number 1 strategy for 2024. If you can get a wide receiver in the first round and follow it up with a running back in the second round, every time we've done that strategy, we have loved the results of it. Okay? Running backs are being pushed down the boards enough, and there are a select number of running backs even being taken in the first 2 rounds, where you're getting guys with running back 1, high-end running back 1 upside in the second round.
You're getting hero running back when you do the hero wide receiver strategy, because there are so many good running backs falling in the second round.
It's essentially hero Bofa.
Yes.
Like that's honestly exactly right. I mean, that's essentially what it should be called. I'll let you cover the strategy though. So best strategy.
Yeah, and that's why I like putting these 2 strategies together this year, like saying hero wide receiver / hero running back. Technically, hero running back is going to be you take a running back specifically in the first round and then a wide receiver in the second. We would highly discourage that for the most part, unless you're going double running back. Like if you're going to go like the traditional hero running back strategy where you take a running back round 1, just go get another running back in round 2. Because I think you're at a disadvantage if you're going to take a wide receiver that, has the floor of being a mid to low end wide receiver too, if they really kind of disappoint, and then you're passing up on a running back who's still a top 6 guy. So that being said, again, hero wide receiver, you take one round 1. One of the best examples we saw in the Flock League is on the tail end. We saw Drake London and Jonathan Taylor go right in that range on the 1-2 turn. We like seeing those types of guys go. We see Puka Nacua go with Saquon Barkley a lot. We see Justin Jefferson paired with Kyron Williams a lot, right? Those are some of the best hero wide receiver builds where you're still getting an elite running back, and why, honestly, I like to call it hero running back still. So with the traditional hero running back strategy, though, if you're taking a running back round 1, if you're taking Bijan, Breece, CMC, I mean, if you're picking up the 101 or the 102, you're probably forced to take CMC if he's there. Not forced to. You have you're going to take him there, and you get to. But it makes it a little more difficult in the later rounds because you are going to be in that range of I have to take Chris Olave. What's his ceiling really going to be in a Derek Carr offense? It's just not as pretty. But if you end up taking one of those guys in the first round, one of those running backs, those top 3 options, you want to lean wide receiver in the third round for sure. If there's a really good follower at the running back position, like if Kyron Williams falls to the tail end of the second round, which we've seen before, just go ahead and go double running back if you've already started at hero running back if the value falls, and then make sure you are hammering wide receiver in those next few rounds. You're probably, if you don't land one of those better running backs, you're probably just going to fade running back for a few rounds and then get a weaker running back too. I know there's a little bit of risk there, but the upside is going to be made up for in the first running back that you took in the first round. So with hero wide receiver specifically, right, this is when you are taking a wide receiver round 1 and then you're going best available running back round 2. We want to take the best available asset in round 3. Honestly, I don't really care that much if it's a tight end. I don't really care that much if it's a running back. I don't care if it ends up being a wide receiver. If you like a value there that falls, that's good enough. At this point, you have the flexibility to go with who you want in the third round, the best value faller, because you just got a really, really nice option for your most important positions at wide receiver and running back. You can take an elite tight end. One of our favorite picks right now is going with Travis Kelce at the end of the third round. He has not fallen outside of the first round in 7 years. I know he's 35. I know he's old and grumpy. I know he's dating Taylor Swift. I know he will not shave his mustache and he looks like a creeper because of it. But at the end of the day, he has the upside to be the tight end 1 overall with Patrick Mahomes, and that hasn't changed. That's a really, really nice pick to take if you go hero wide receiver. I would still consider punting at quarterback. I think the best values that you can get are your Jared Goffs, Trevor Lawrence, Kirk Cousins, Tua even, Caleb Williams as a rookie, Jaden Daniels, like those guys in the 10th round or beyond. They're just too good of values to pass up at that point, and it's better to not waste your earlier picks on quarterbacks when you can get guys that have mid quarterback 1 upside later. Brock Purdy, even, I didn't mention him. This strategy, again, is going to allow you to dominate at running back and wide receiver and have the flexibility to take who you want for the next couple rounds after rounds 1 and 2.
Okay, now let's talk about zero running back. And we posted a video detailing all of these strategies a couple weeks ago, and quite a few people watched it. And the main comment we got on it, in fact, people were very angry with us because we said in a zero running back build, we would prefer to punt QB and tight end or one of the two. And people said, well, that's not what a zero running back is. Zero running back means you have to take quarterback and tight end. Okay, so my question is, what would you call a strategy where you don't take any running back, take wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, and you don't take an elite QB or tight end? Because I don't necessarily think you have to take QB and tight end with zero running back this year. I would recommend probably taking one of them, and my preference is tight end. Right? And so, because if I can get a Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce, Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, something like that, I would prefer that instead of getting a Goddard, Njoku, somebody like that in the later rounds over taking, a Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, and then being able to get somebody that has rushing upside later in the draft as well, such as a Jaden Daniels. You can get Tua, you can get Jared Goff. So, if you're going to do a zero running back strategy, this means in round 1, you're taking a wide receiver, which is what we suggest anyway. In round 2, the best available there is a wide receiver. So a wide receiver is the best available. He falls down to you maybe. So you're like, okay, I've got 2 receivers here. This is not a bad thing, right? So we're really going to take running back value only if it's there in 3, 4, and 5. And so that means if you got a running back that falls, like say a running back falls out of tier 4 or 5, take a running back, right? Don't not take a running back because zero running back, okay? Again, zero running back, that's why it's hard to say hero running back, could be in the 3rd this year. But with zero running back, if there's running back value in the 3rd or 4th or 5th round, you take it. However, most of the time here, we're going to consider either A, continue to take wide receivers, which is fine. If you're in a start 2 wide receiver, 2 flex league, you can start as many as 4 of these guys. Meaning you have a good wide receiver in your bench if you have 5. And again, you're also going to have trade leverage over your league mates. A lot of people are like, what are you going to do with all those wide receivers? It's not a bad thing to have a very deep fantasy team because odds are at least one of your guys up front's not going to hit. That's just what happens.
Correct.
And so we're also going to consider taking tight end or quarterback in rounds 3 through 5 here. And this, again, my favorite targets here, I like Sam Laporta. I think he's a little bit. Travis Kelce. Those are my top 2 tight ends. I think you grab one of those guys, you're in really good shape. Trey McBride is also somebody I think is going under the radar. Again, I like Mark Andrews. Kyle Pitts a little bit later if you can get him as well. But if you're taking a quarterback, probably want that quarterback to fall to you. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. I'm not taking a ton of Patrick Mahomes this year, to be honest with you. As much as I love Patrick Mahomes, I just like the guy with rushing upside is a little bit more. However, I do think you can get quarterback in the 6th round and get Kyler Murray, or 7th round even get Kyler Murray, right? So there are still guys that I think you can get. I don't think you necessarily have to take QB early in this zero running back strategy. I do not think that's true. I disagree with that. I've done it. It works. It works. And so with this, and then you're going to talk about running back, because a lot of people are going to go zero running back and they're going to be tempted to take running backs in the dead zone. You're only going to look for value followers in the running back dead zone. And then there are going to be some running backs in the dead zone we like. You can check out our videos for that because we've highlighted some of the running backs in the dead zone we really like. Some of those guys include Jonathan Brooks, right? We're really high on Jonathan Brooks, even if you have an IR slot on your roster, because that means you can put him on IR and go pick somebody else up, even Chuba Hubbard, because he's not being drafted everywhere, right? We like Jonathan Brooks there. We like Alvin Kamara. We think Alvin Kamara has a lot of upside this year as well. There's a lot of guys there in that running back dead zone that we would target. So make sure you're keeping an eye on those videos, and also make sure that, again, you're only taking the dead zone running backs, the guys we really don't want, if they're falling to you in drafts. And so filling out your roster, you take, again, wide receiver start. Don't be afraid to take a running back in rounds 3 through 5, but take the value at quarterback, tight end, or running back there. Again, really what qualifies as your running back is basically not taking a running back in the 2nd round for us. Other people have different definitions of that. But for the sake of this video and this strategy, I think if you're moving forward with 2 wide receivers, at that point, fill out the rest of your team the best you can with the value that falls to you, no matter how your build is. And make sure that, again, you're not reaching on running backs and getting desperate because you passed on running backs in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, and then double running back is pretty self-explanatory. You're going running backs in the first 2 rounds. You're going with Bijan Robinson and Kyron Williams. You're going with Breece Hall and Devon Achane. You're going with Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry. Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor, which is one of our favorite double running back builds there if you're on the tail end of the first round at the 1-2 turn there. But this is, like, without a question, if you, number one, it's incredibly risky. I don't think anyone would deny that it's incredibly risky, but the upside this year is probably higher than it's ever been in years past because, again, we have not seen running backs fall this far ever in the history of fantasy football. Now, with that being said, if you're taking double running back, if you're taking 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds of your fantasy draft, you have to take wide receiver rounds 3, rounds 4, and rounds 5.
There's no
questions asked. You have to do it or you are in a world of hurt and incredibly, you're totally at risk of losing your league and like being dead last. Because not only do you have a lot of volatility at the running back position and risk of injury, but you also are going to have one of the weakest wide receiver rooms if you're not just hammering it for at least the next 3 rounds. And then after you go double running back, you don't want to be taking any other running backs for quite a while. Like, quite a while. And by that, I mean like dead zone running backs is when you want to start taking value followers in the dead zone, where there's just a huge tier of guys that are, in vacated volume situations and things like that. Don't take QB or tight end early in this format. If you're going double running back, you're not taking Allen in the third and freaking Trey McBride in the fourth. At that point, you may as well just give away your buy-in, and you may give away the championship, and just it's going to be a 1 in 11 chance for everyone else in your league, right, to win, because you cannot win without wide receivers. As much as we like running backs this year and their value, wide receivers have gotten too good, and their production has become too consistent for us to pass up on them for 4 straight rounds. This is by far, again, the riskiest strategy. Only do it if you are confident that wide receivers are going to fall. So this is going to be really, really common in home leagues where people are a lot higher on running backs, and maybe that'll result in them being pushed up boards a little bit. But if you're specifically at the 1-2 turn, like 110, and you're coming on the wraparound and getting a pick at the 203, that's a great range to go double running back in a home league, because you still are going to be in the range where you can get like a JT and a Saquon, maybe a JT and a Kyron Williams as well. And that is going to help you in the future rounds where people in your home leagues are just, going old school. They're like grumpy old men that still like all their running backs, and they're reaching on all those guys because they're going fast. And you're like, oh, yeah, I get Drake London in the 4th round. Don't say it doesn't happen. We've seen it happen in home leagues before. Like, that's one of the most common misconceptions in home leagues is that that these guys that have big, high-profile names in situations going into 2024 aren't being shorted. Because Drake London, for example, is a guy where 50% of your casuals in fantasy football are like, he hasn't done anything production-wise the first 2 years. Why the heck would I take him in the first 3 rounds?
Exactly.
I promise you it's absolutely going to happen. So know your league mates when you're going with double running back, for sure.
All right, and our last strategy here is going to be one we haven't really seen a good name for. I saw some people start talking about it here recently, but we call it the rainbow draft. Why? Because you look at it on Sleeper and you see people do it. You're like, oh, look, it's a rainbow. And so with the rainbow draft, round 1 can be running back or wide receiver, so it doesn't really matter which one you take here. And the round 2 pick here is going to be the opposite of round 1. So say you go running back round 1, you're going to go wide receiver round 2. Again, always running back, wide receiver, they can flip either way. Then in round 3, you're going to take the quarterback or tight end. So you'll be like, okay, in late round 3, I got Jalen Hurts at Veldman. I'm going to take Jalen Hurts. Or I've got Sam Laporta here, and I'm comfortable taking Laporta. I think I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And then in round 4, say you take Josh Allen in round 3. In round 4, you're like, oh, look, Trey McBride is here at the end of the 4th round. I think I'm going to take him. And then so you've got a running back, a wide receiver, a quarterback, and a tight end. All positional ones. You've got all 4 guys, right? Say you've got Josh Allen, Sam Laporta, and then Nico Collins, and then Bijan Robinson. That's like 4 ones, right? And so you've got a wide receiver one, you've got a tight end one, the tight end one, the quarterback one, and then a wide receiver one, right? This is the rainbow strategy, and this is basically taking the best available at each position through the first 4 rounds. And this one is, again, I think a little bit riskier because we are still going to stand by the fact, based on the research that we've done all offseason, that quarterback and tight end are most likely not going to win you leagues unless it is specified in your league settings that tight ends get some kind of bonus or quarterbacks get some kind of bonus. So we are advocates of punting quarterback, drafting quarterback late, and taking elite tight ends where you can, where they fall to you. But if you can't, taking a tight end late as well. I recently deployed this strategy in the flock draft as well, where I went hero wide receiver, right? This is the number 1 strategy we have is hero wide receiver. Wide receiver in the first, Amon-Ra. Then I took Kyron. And then I took ETN. And then I followed up with Pittman. And then I think I took T. Higgins. And so, like, I took running back and wide receiver until, like, round 9. Till I finally took Dallas Goedert, which it sucks. Again, I punted tight end. Punt means you're not going to have a super good tight end. But you can stream tight end and win fantasy championships. That's fact. And you can do the same with quarterback. However, I got Jaden Daniels. And then it was a deep enough league that I had a good enough bench spots where I could roster Jared Goff as well. And so, with that, I think that we stand by the fact that you don't need to draft quarterback and tight end, but if you do, it's definitely a strategy that could win you your fantasy football league. Any of these strategies can win leagues. The only one that probably won't is going 0 wide receiver, like not taking any wide receivers. Wouldn't recommend doing that. But let's talk now that we know this, that's how you decide which strategy you're going for and then how to kind of let it play out throughout the draft. Let's now talk about how your roster should look when you're done, because we get a lot of, like, how many wide receivers should I have? How many running backs should I have? What should my roster construction look like? I'll start with quarterback position here. If you take a top 6 or 7 or 8 really QB in your draft, you're in a 12-team, 10-team, whatever, and it's a 1 QB league like most redraft leagues are, you're rostering 1 quarterback. And that's it. You really only need 1 quarterback here. If you take a quarterback that's, like, say, ranked from somewhere like 11 to 14, 10 to 14, something like that, and you have enough bench spots, you can take 2 quarterbacks here. Okay, so a good example of this. The two teams that went no quarterback in the flock draft were myself and Mason. Both of us took 2 quarterbacks because A, we had the bench spots to do it, but B, I took Jaden Daniels, he took Caleb Williams, we both took rookies, so we followed it up with some safer picks in Brock Purdy and Jared Goff. I got Jared Goff to stack with Amon-Ra St. Brown. So because I took Jaden Daniels in the 9th round, I went ahead and took Jared Goff. A, I had the roster spots. B, at that point in the draft, since nobody was selecting a second QB, which was smart, by the way, I know most of those guys at the end of that draft are going to get cut off of my team. I know Jared Goff is insurance at my quarterback position. I know I'm not going to cut him. I'm just going to hold him on my roster. And if I need to drop him for, wow, that was great. On my roster, and if I need to drop him for another player, I can do that. By that time, I'll know which one of the quarterbacks I want to keep and ride with for the rest of the season. But if you're going to roster two QBs, make sure you have at least one stack. And again, the flock draft is the best example of that. And then roster 3 QBs, obviously, if you play in a Superflex redraft league where you're starting 2 QBs every week, and then make sure you have a solid backup as well. Let's talk about running back.
Yeah, so running back, if you're in a start 2 flex 2 format, you want to have 4 to 6 running backs, right? I'm in a start 2 flex 2 right now where I have 3 running backs on my roster, and I'm about to pee myself because I'm so scared. Don't do that.
Don't pee yourself.
Yeah, make sure. Well, don't pee yourself, but also make sure that you have at the very, very least 4 running backs. We know how volatile the position is. Not to mention, again, just your constant inflow of bye weeks that really start hitting you hard in the middle point of the season when wins really, really matter. When things become more and more pressing, you're starting to fight for different positions. In the playoffs, different seedings that you want, maybe even a first round bye if you're in that type of format. But 4 to 6 running backs, you just want to have safety and comfort there. Handcuffs. I mean, that can include some handcuffs, just making sure you have a constant inflow of running backs on your roster. That's still gonna apply to start 2 flex 1. We're gonna have 4 to 5 running backs there as well. Again, this one's pretty self-explanatory. It's one of the positions where you're starting multiple a week, and you don't want the 3rd running back that you're flexing being the last option that you even have at the running back position either. So
see, your voice cracks too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with us today. Let's go to wide receiver now. And so wide receiver, you generally want to have 1 or 2 more wide receivers than you have running backs on your team if you're playing in PPR leagues, okay? Even if you're starting the same amount of running backs and wide receivers are going to be a little bit more valuable. There's going to be more of them available that can be productive for your fantasy team. So just because of the sheer amount of wide receivers that are productive in the NFL, you're going to want more wide receivers than running backs on your roster. And so for wide receiver, in a start 2 flex 2, you're going to want 7 to 8 wide receivers. Either of those numbers are good. In a start 2 flex 1, maybe 1 less, 6 to 7 wide receivers. But again, really the main thing here is looking at the correlation between running back and wide receiver. You're going to have, on average, anywhere between 2 to 3 more wide receivers on your roster than you have running backs. And that's a good rule of thumb, right? Yep. So if you're getting to the later rounds and you notice, okay, I've got 7 wide receivers, but I only have 3 running backs, you're like, probably going to be taking a running back there, right? If you get there, you're like, I already have 4 running backs, I only have 5 wide receivers, you can load up on receiver in the later rounds. But that's how you decide what to do in your later rounds with your fantasy team and who to draft for your depth. Just making sure you're balancing those two, the most important positions, the positions where leagues are won are running back and wide receivers. So you need to make sure you have the correct quantity of those. And if you don't play in a start 2 flex 2 or start 1 flex 1, you can scale them with these percentage allocations here. Running back's going to be anywhere from 25 to 40% of your roster spots. Wide receivers anywhere from 40 to 50% of your roster spots. Again, so the high end number of running backs is the bottom end number for wide receivers. Wide receivers can be up to half of your roster, including your bench spots. Tight ends and quarterbacks are both 6 to 12, meaning you're going to have 1 to 2 of those max most of the time. So. Yeah.
And then tight end, we're going to close out here. You generally want to be rostering 1 tight end. If you're one of those teams that gets really a top 8 option, there's not really any reason for you to roster another tight end. The only exception to this is if you take one of those top tight ends and then you snag TJ Hawkinson in the 12th round, right? If you get him at a really good price, you know he's probably going to be back week 6 to 8, halfway through the season. And like I did that in one of my leagues. Would I recommend it all the time? No. Could it be stupid? Maybe. But it's a nice card to play in the middle of the season when you know, again, this is one where you want to be aware of your league mates. If you know that 3-4 of your league mates punted tight end entirely, they could be desperate for a tight end in the middle of the season and need a guy that isn't a scrub that they're throwing in every other week where they don't know if they're going to score 0 points or 10. So that's a nice leverage move to make with TJ Hawkinson, where you get to week 7, you get to week 8, you already have an elite tight end that you know is producing. You're like, I don't need Hawkinson. I can flex him though if no one wants to take him from me. If it really comes to that, worst case scenario. Best case scenario, you get an overpay because you're selling him to a guy that's desperate. Other than that, you want to go with 2 tight ends if you're punting tight end entirely. You want to go with a Colby Parkinson and a Ben Sinnott, right? You want to go with a Dallas Goedert and Cade Otton, right. So that's cute. We thought about it at the exact same time.
Yeah,
but that's what you want to do when you're fading tight or punting tight end. You want to take 2 tight ends. So if one of them doesn't work out, you can start the other. If both of them don't work out, they weren't going to work out anyways, so you're kind of just screwed at the position, and you signed up for that when you faded tight end overall. So that's kind of the strategy that we're going with tight end this year.
And there you go. Start to finish, you should be able to use this strategy in your fantasy football leagues to make sure that you perform your draft correctly, but also utilize your strategies correctly. Make sure you're picking the right strategy. Make sure you're taking the right players when they fall to you in the first 2 rounds. This should have everything you need. Again, corresponding tool to go with this video is linked down in the comment section. Also, our draft guide is down there as well. Again, we're giving you our draft guide for free. The only thing that we're going to ask is that if you subscribe to the channel. If you would do that, we promise you we're going to bring you in-depth, high-quality fantasy football analysis from now until the end of the season to help you win your fantasy leagues. Our goal is to help you win as much money as you can in your fantasy football leagues. We'd appreciate it if you subscribe. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Keep an eye out for more strategy videos this week. We'll see you later.